Hi, this is the 49th session, the 49th episode of Physics 9. I am Sir CJ, and in this session, we are still under gather information. The first, second, and third parts of the session are all from the same division of the book number 24 of the fourth unit of the 7E based self learning module. You will see the contents of this session on the 12th and the 13th pages. The second, and the third parts of this session are actually mere discussions about different kinds of power plants. So we have here nuclear nuclear power plant, and then geothermal power plant, and then yung hydroelectric power plant. We are going to talk about them, and then we're going to be looking at specific terms, no, and maybe comparing one with the other, one from the other, so that we can distinguish them. Doing these discussions will actually help you in explaining how heat transfer and energy transformation make heat engines like geothermal power plants work. So specifically for this, actually, but you can actually learn as well from the nuclear power plants and the hydroelectric power plants, which is actually part of your competencies as well previously. And then the second, the learning competency naman is for you to be capable of explaining how electrical energy is generated, transmitted, and distributed. I think in this session, we are mostly talking about electrical energy generation, right? Pero we're gonna be talking more about transmission and distribution. Actually, mga ano lang yan eh, medyo short topics lang yan sa ating kumbaga sa ating sessions, not really sa Physics 9 as a whole. Yeah, short topics lang sila because they're quite simpler, okay, compared to power generation. Power generation is actually a more complicated and a more controversial process. Okay, let's begin with nuclear power plant. So we see here the containment structure is right here. The structure has the reactor vessel, which is where the splitting of the atom might actually be construed to happen. And then these are rods that will be controlling the thermal energy circulating in this area. Ayan. These are also, yeah, control rods. And then this one right here adds some pressure, or it's where the pressure is adjusted, is controlled. And as you can see, the thermal energy that is coming from this reactor vessel is in contact with water that is coming from the source over here. Actually, here sa source na to. Actually, siguro this is a condenser, at the same time it's connected to a source, and then it's getting regulated, and then the liquid water gets heated up here and then turns into steam, and with the increased pressure coming from this increasing heat as well, the steam will be generated to turn the turbine. And then the turbine in return is going to activate the generator, which will produce electricity, and that is going to be transmitted and distributed. Now, yung steam will be turned into water through this condenser. Remember, condensation is a process of turning gaseous substances, gaseous matter, yeah, into liquid forms. And yeah, yung gaseous water here is gonna be returned lang into its liquid form, and then it's gonna be reused dito sa may containment structure. Okay, and then actually that water could also be kumbaga cooled down further sa isang cooling tower. A nuclear power plant obviously now is a thermal power plant. It is not a kinetic power plant. It produces thermal energy by allowing the splitting of a nuclei of a radioactive element inside the reactor vessel. So we know that atoms were kumbaga parang believed to be indestructible, to be indivisible before, pero the thing is they actually could be split, and splitting them will actually generate a lot of electricity, of a lot of power. Okay, a lot of energy, and that is what we are using here in this setup of a nuclear power plant. The heat is used for the production of steam in the steam generator, which turns the turbine to activate the generator that produces electrical energy. This uses non-renewable resources because the elements that reacted inside the reactor vessel, they just don't get to be retrieved in the process. So once nag-react na sila, there's no way for us to retrieve them or to reuse them. Now, pag nagamit na sila, yun nga, nawawala na sila. Ang mga power plants na to, they don't produce a lot of pollution, but constructing them is actually very expensive. Now, yung disposal ng mismong nuclear waste, even though in terms of volume, hindi naman siya ganun karamihan, but in terms of of sensitivity, in terms of parang danger, no, mataas siya in terms of danger. You cannot just throw it anywhere. There was even a time actually that nuclear waste was thrown in the middle of the ocean, pero we stopped doing that. Countries stopped doing that kasi nga that poses a really big threat. Can you imagine that? Leaders of the world actually believed that you can just throw your nuclear waste into the water, like all right. Now, yeah, it's expensive to build. They're expensive to build, and then their nuclear waste, even though smaller in volume, they're actually dangerous, even though smaller in volume. And then accidents as well inside the nuclear power plant facility. They're actually great threats, and not just to the facility itself and to the people in there, but also to nearby communities. If you want to learn more about nuclear meltdowns, you can actually go ahead and kumbaga, use that as your search item for just to know more. Okay. Okay. Now, for the second part of this session, we are going to re-discuss, kasi I believe that we already made this discussion before. Geothermal power plants. Geothermal power plants are using renewable resources. Instead of using a nuclear reaction, what it uses up as a source of thermal energy is the actual heat of the planet. Okay, so paano to? Paano kaya to? Ganito siya. Yung steam, hindi na siya kumbaga directly ginagawa ng mismong containment vessel. Wala nang ganun-ganun. It is directly sourced, yung steam mismo, it gets directly sourced from the surface, beneath the surface actually of the planet, that is connected to a reservoir of water or an aquifer as a source of steam. Tapos, it will be sucking it up, okay? And then yung steam is gonna be put into this chamber, and then it will be transported through a rod, through a connector to the turbine, which will activate the generator. And then the steam is going to be redirected towards the cooling tower, where it gets to escape as water vapor dito. Kaya nga kapag nagpunta ka ng mga geothermal power plants, you will see na napakarami niyang mga usok-usok. Actually, yung usok na yun, it's simply water vapor na tremendous ng volume. Even though it's tremendous in volume, that steam is actually bawas na, no? Yung ibang steam kasi talagang diretso na sila nagiging tubig, which gets cooled down in this chamber, and it goes back as well towards the source para ma-replenish siya or ma-refill siya. And then yung electricity here na na-produce, again, will be transmitted, and it will be distributed. Okay. Geothermal power plants have low operating costs, but air pollution because of the water vapor is a positive, it's a threat, okay? Sa ating climate, sa general climate weather ng ating mga communities, not real communities, ng mga areas that are near geothermal power plants. Kaya ang ginagawa talaga para hindi ma-alter ng sobra yung kumbaga yung place where geothermal power plants are situated. Most power companies, electric cooperatives are actually not going. They're actually planting so many trees around them. And tas yung nasa gitna, it's a clearing, it's a power plant. Pero surrounding that power plant, it's actually a very thick volume of trees and plant life. Ayan. To maintain the general temperature and as well as to siguro utilize some of that water vapor and yeah, minimize yung contribution ng greenhouse gas to the atmosphere. Now, since both nuclear and geothermal power plants harness heat or thermal energy, they use or produce thermal energy for them to work, they're actually both forms of heat engines. Alright, the next one, we cannot really consider it as a heat engine, but it is a very reliable source of power, hydroelectric power plants. So as you can see here, it is a river. So yung river is meron siyang dalawang areas, an elevated area, and that is actually elevated because of the building of a dam. As you may see over here, the dam's structure is like this. Okay, and then it actually connects to a lower area here, which is the continuation of the river. So this dam, what's behind the dam is a water reservoir, and yung opening sa may bandang baba is called the intake. And then this area right here between the intake and the turbine itself is the penstock. So yung pressure dyan is quite high. Gravity kasi is allowing this flow through the penstock. And then the turbine is situated here and it's gonna rotate. It's connected to a generator and the generator produces electricity. Now, as you can see, we have here a transformer, and the generator and transformer inside actually compose the powerhouse as it is named or tagged here upwards. Now, the transformer has the ability to step up or step down again yung electricity, and it's connected through transmission lines, also called as power lines. And then it's gonna be distributed to the communities or to substations. Ngayon, ang mangyayari dun sa tubig, it's simply gonna be flowing downwards and then outflow and then into the river. What's good about this is we have control dun sa tubig, no? At dapat reliable lang talaga yung pagkakabuild ng dam. So that, kumbaga, we can have, as much as possible, a stock of water that has the ability to flow. So, halimbawa, nakapag-generate siya ng electricity, we can just close the intake and maybe wait for it to fill up again and then open it once more so it generates electricity. Ayun. So, that is it for the how it works. Now, the production of steam is common dun sa two previous na mga power plants, yung nuclear at geothermal. But kinetic power plants like this hydroelectric power plant and later on yung wind farm, they don't really require the input of heat. So as it was explained kanina, the source of mechanical energy to turn the turbine is actually the flow of the water, making it, a kinetic power plant. These power plants produce no waste, but their establishment required the building of dams which may actually cause tremendous flooding in the nearby area. So ito kasing area na to, it's elevated. So if ever kasing mag-fill up talaga siya ng sobra-sobra ng tubig, it might result to flooding areas here over here sa may bandang end dito. Kasi actual houses, residential areas are sometimes built near rivers over here. So halimbawa, sobra na yung pag-uulan, kailangan na talaga mag-release ng tubig ng dam. And to do that, it has to open the intake and maybe keep the water flowing here. Because without doing that, if it's not gonna let water flow, it's just gonna overflow over here, which might destroy the structure. They really have to open it strategically so that hindi siya mag-flood over here. But yeah, that's a risk. So, remember the different, actually mali lang itong name natin dito. It's not geothermal power plant, okay? It's a hydroelectric power plant. But I hope that in this video lesson, your eyes were opened dun sa endless possibilities at saka mga designs, mga geniuses ng designs na mayroon tayo, yung mga in-engineer ng mga people na nauna sa atin when it comes to generating electricity. They actually look so beautiful, right? Yung mga designs na yun. They actually look so they actually feel so smart na ganun yung pagkaka-design. Napaka-smart ng pagkaka-design nila, right? And I'm hoping that you as a science student, you are now parang also opening up to the possibility na meron pa tayong ibang mga ways or siguro mga possible pang mga designs na pwedeng magawa to generate electricity, and maybe we can use other sources this time that are more renewable. In this video lesson, we finished discussing nuclear, geothermal, and hydroelectric power plants. Our goal is still to promote mastery of the following learning competencies, and that you should be capable of explaining how heat transfer and energy transformation make heat engines like geothermal power plants work, and that you should be capable of explaining how electrical energy is generated, transmitted, and distributed. All of these contents are found in the 7E based self learning module in Science 9, which I wrote, particularly in the 4th unit, book number 24, of pages 12 to 13. This is Sir CJ, and I hope that I will see you in the last two na lang yata yun, last two video lessons in Physics 9. I hope that you are having a good day so far.